On February 1st, 2026, there were fewer than 1,800 homes available to rent in the entire country of Ireland. Not in Galway, not in one region, in the whole country. That's the lowest number recorded since Daft.ie started tracking this back in 2006, and it's down 22% from the same date just 1 year earlier. This is the story of what's happening in Galway, Cork, Limerick and Waterford right now, and why economists are calling this the tightest rental market Ireland has ever measured. Here's what actually happened.
For years, Dublin got all the headlines when people talked about Ireland's housing crisis. But according to the latest Daft.ie rental report, authored by Trinity College Dublin economist Ronan Lyons, the real story right now is happening outside the capital. In the final quarter of 2025, rents in Galway City jumped 11.4% year-on-year. Cork was up 7.5%, Waterford climbed 6.9%, Limerick rose 5%. Dublin, by comparison, only rose 2.7 to 3% over the same period. Renters in Galway say they're applying for places within minutes of them going up and still losing out. Landlords and letting agents say they're getting dozens of applications for a single listing within hours. The government says new rent control measures, which took effect March 1, 2026, will eventually stabilize things. Economists like Lyons disagree, arguing the changeover itself may have made the shortage worse in the short term. But that's just one part of the story. Reportedly, the run-up to the new rules created a kind of holding pattern. Under the new system, landlords can reset rents to market rates once a tenancy ends voluntarily and every 6 years after that. According to Lyons' report, widespread uncertainty about the new rent controls appears to have exacerbated ongoing supply shortages in the rental market. In plain terms, landlords held off listing properties until they knew exactly what the new rules meant for them. Go back further and the pattern gets worse. In August 2022, according to Daft.ie's own historical data, there were only 716 homes available to rent across all of Ireland. Outside Dublin, in Cork, Limerick, Galway and Waterford combined, availability regularly fell below 100 homes across all 4 cities at once that year. Compare that to the years just before COVID, 2015 to 2019, when those same 4 cities typically had around 242 homes to rent between them, and the whole country averaged close to 4,000. So even the pre-pandemic numbers, which felt tight at the time, were roughly double or triple what these cities have seen since. If that sounded bad, this next part shocked analysts even more: the raw numbers. Before we get into it, if you're following the Irish housing market, hit subscribe. We break down what's actually happening with prices, rates and supply every week, with real numbers, not guesswork. Here's where things stand right now, according to Daft.ie's most recent reporting. Average 2-bedroom apartment rent nationally is €2,086 a month. In Dublin, that number is closer to €2,700 in the city centre. In Galway, rents for a 2-bed apartment are averaging €2,113, up 11.4% in a single year. National rent inflation for 2025 came in at 4.4%, and Lyons points out rents have now risen in 13 of the last 14 years. They're 1/3 higher than before COVID and 80% higher than they were a decade ago. On the supply side, the picture outside Dublin actually got slightly less bad by May 2026. The Q1 2026 report showed availability across the 4 other cities had nearly doubled compared to a year earlier, as landlords who'd been holding back finally started listing again once the new rent rules kicked in.
But Lyons was careful to note that this bump needs to be interpreted with care. It looks more like a release of pent-up supply than an actual fix to the underlying shortage. Dublin, meanwhile, is still down, and nationally supply remains very constrained. Now let's move to the real turning point, what's actually being done about it.
The government has leaned hard into new construction as the answer. Ireland's housing budget for 2026 tops €9 billion, with an additional €2.25 billion going toward water infrastructure through Uisce Éireann, because in Galway specifically, large stretches of zoned residential land can't be built on until water and wastewater capacity catches up. Local politicians, including Sinn Féin TD Mairead Farrell, have called the situation in Galway the worst they've seen in a decade, pointing to a reliance on the Housing Assistance Payment Scheme instead of direct delivered social housing. Meanwhile, home builders are shifting focus toward new build homes rather than the second-hand market. Daft's Q2 2026 sales report shows new home transactions up 17% year-on-year, while second-hand sales have stalled and remain below their 2022 peak. Investors and developers are clearly betting that building new is where the volume is. The existing housing stock just isn't turning over. And here's where things stand as of right now.
As of right now, homelessness figures in Ireland have topped 16,000 people a month, including thousands of children, according to figures cited through 2025 and into 2026. The social housing waiting list sits at close to 60,000 households. Ireland's rental vacancy rate nationally is estimated at just 1% to 2%. A healthy market runs at 5 to 7%. For Galway specifically, the fundamentals cut both ways. The city has real economic momentum, strong employment and population growth pulling more people in every year. But without water infrastructure and zoned land actually turning into finished homes, none of that growth translates into more places to live. Prices don't fall because people want them to. They fall when supply goes up, and right now supply isn't going up fast enough. Lyons' own conclusion in the report is blunt. The number of homes available to rent remains the single best predictor of where prices go next, and with supply still shrinking in Dublin and only tentatively recovering elsewhere, the pressure across Galway, Cork, Limerick and Waterford is not expected to ease anytime soon. This single story exposes just how fragile Ireland's regional rental markets really are, and everyone's watching what happens next.